What if the grandest, most valuable works of art in the world could simply evaporate? Imagine walking into a hallowed gallery, not to see a masterpiece, but to stare at a dusty, empty space on the wall where it used to hang. This isn't a hypothetical question. It is the cold, baffling reality of the largest property theft in history, a crime so audacious, so perfectly executed, that it has left a $500 million hole in the art world. 13 priceless pieces gone. 30 years of searching, nothing. The mystery isn't just who did it, but where on earth did the art go? The night was March 18, 1990. Boston was alive, celebrating St. Patrick's Day. But in the quiet, Venetian-style palace of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, a different kind of history was about to be made. At 1:24 in the morning, two men dressed as Boston police officers buzzed the security entrance. They told the young night watchman, Rick Abath, that they were responding to a disturbance call. Against all protocol, against all common sense, Abath let them in. It was a decision that would unleash the greatest art heist of all time, a ghost story written in empty frames. The two guards on duty, Rick Abath and Randy Hestand, were swiftly overpowered. The fake policeman told them, "Gentlemen, this is a robbery." They were bound with duct tape and handcuffs and led down to the museum's dark, damp basement, chained to pipes and left in the darkness. They were alive, but they were helpless. Upstairs, the thieves had the run of the place. They had 81 minutes. 81 minutes to wander through a silent palace filled with treasures, free to pick and choose from one of the world's most magnificent private collections. The clock was ticking on a crime that would become legend. The thieves' choices were both masterful and bizarre. They went straight to the Dutch room, the heart of the collection. There, they crudely sliced two monumental Rembrandts from their frames, his only seascape, the storm on the Sea of Galilee, and A Lady and Gentleman in Black. They also took what was considered the most valuable painting in the museum, Johannes Vermeer's The Concert, one of only 34 of his works known to exist. But then their selections grew stranger. They took a small Rembrandt self-portrait etching, a Govert Flinck landscape, and 5 drawings by Edgar Degas. Their haul didn't end with paintings. They also stole an ancient Chinese bronze beaker, or gu, from the Shang dynasty, and in a final act of inexplicable theft, a bronze eagle finial that sat atop a Napoleonic flag. They left behind more valuable works, including a Titian, and even botched an attempt to remove the flag itself. For 81 minutes, they moved through the museum, their movements tracked by motion detectors, before finally walking out into the pre-dawn Boston air with a haul now valued at over $500 million. They vanished, and with them, a priceless chunk of human culture. The next morning, the silence was broken. The day shift guards arrived to find the museum eerily quiet. Discovering they couldn't reach the night guards, they called the police, who entered the building and found a scene of utter violation. They found the empty frames, some discarded on the floor, and the gaping holes on the walls where masterpieces had hung for nearly a century. Down in the basement, they found the two guards cold and shaken, but unharmed. The world's most devastating art heist had been discovered, and the largest, most frustrating art hunt in history was about to begin. The FBI immediately took charge of the investigation, codenamed Operation Masterpiece. The crime scene, however, was a study in contradictions. The thieves were professional enough to use a convincing disguise and bypass the initial security, yet they were clumsy enough to smash frames and crudely cut canvases. The duct tape, handcuffs, and other materials left behind were meticulously examined, but they yielded no fingerprints, no DNA, no clues to the perpetrators' identities. The thieves had been ghosts, leaving behind only absence and a string of perplexing questions for investigators to unravel. suspicion immediately fell upon the 23-year-old night watchman, Rick Abath. Why did he break protocol and let the men in? Why had he, just minutes before the fake police arrived, briefly opened and then closed a side door, an act that was against all the rules? Abath maintained his innocence, claiming he was just a young, inexperienced guard who made a terrible mistake. He passed initial polygraph tests, but the cloud of suspicion would follow him for the rest of his life. Was he an unfortunate dupe, or the inside man who opened the door to a $500 million crime? The investigation quickly turned towards Boston's criminal underworld. A heist of this magnitude, it was reasoned, could only have been pulled off by an organized crime syndicate. The FBI began looking into the city's notorious mob families, particularly the Patriarcha crime family, which held sway over New England's rackets. The theory was that the art was not stolen for its aesthetic value, but to be used as a high-stakes bargaining chip, a get-out-of-jail-free card for a mobster facing a long prison sentence. The paintings had become hostages in a game played by very dangerous men. A promising but ultimately tragic lead emerged in the form of a low-level career criminal named Louis Royce. He claimed to have cased the museum in the 1980s with a partner, and he knew the security was lax. He told investigators that he believed his former partner had carried out the heist and could lead them to the art. The FBI was intrigued, but before they could fully vet his story, Royce died of a heart attack. With him died a potentially crucial link, another door slamming shut in the labyrinthine investigation. Another name that surfaced was Miles Connor Jr., a brilliant but notorious art thief and rock musician who was, conveniently for him, in prison at the time of the heist. Connor was a larger-than-life figure who claimed to have pulled off numerous art thefts. He told the FBI that he had cased the Gardner years before, and that his associates had likely carried out the job. He offered to help recover the art in exchange for his release, but he could never produce the goods. Was he a genuine informant, or just a master manipulator playing games with the feds from behind bars? For years, the investigation yielded nothing but dead ends and whispers. The trail went cold. The art world mourned, and the Gardner Museum, in a powerful act of defiance and hope, left the empty frames hanging on the walls. They serve as placeholders for the missing works and as haunting reminders of the gaping void left by the crime. The empty spaces became as famous as the art they once held, silent monuments to an unsolved mystery, waiting for their inhabitants to return home. As the years turned into a decade, the investigation shifted focus to a crew of aging mobsters associated with a Dorchester-based faction of the Patriarcha family. A key figure was Carmelo Merlino, a mobster who, while in prison, allegedly boasted to fellow inmates about his involvement in the heist. He claimed he was planning to use the art to negotiate a reduction in his sentence. The FBI put immense pressure on Merlino, but he died in prison in 2005, taking any secrets he had about the paintings to his grave. The trail then led to another mob associate, Robert the Cook Garant. In 2010, Garant's widow came forward with a startling claim. She told the FBI that shortly after the heist, her husband had come into possession of 2 of the stolen paintings. She claimed that before he died of cancer in 2004, he had given the paintings to another elderly Connecticut mobster named Robert Gentile for safekeeping. This was the most concrete lead the FBI had received in 20 years. The hunt was on for Robert Gentile. Robert Gentile was an unlikely figure to be at the center of the world's biggest art heist. In his 70s and in poor health, he lived a quiet life in Manchester, Connecticut. He vehemently denied having the paintings or knowing anything about them. But the FBI didn't believe him. They put him under intense surveillance and in 2012 raided his home. They found no paintings, but they did discover a secret ditch under a false floor in his backyard. In his basement, they found a handwritten list of the stolen Gardner artworks, their estimated black market values, and notes about a potential handover in Maine. The pressure on Gentile intensified. He was arrested on unrelated gun and drug charges, which the FBI hoped to use as leverage to make him talk. They offered him immunity and a share of the reward money. They even had another informant claim that Gentile had tried to sell the paintings for millions. Still, Gentile insisted he knew nothing. He failed a polygraph test when asked if he ever had the paintings, but he never broke his silence. He chose to serve time in prison rather than cooperate, embodying the mafia's code of omerta. While Gentile sat in prison, the FBI continued to dig. They conducted another massive search of his property, bringing in ground-penetrating radar and excavators. They searched the properties of his associate. They chased down leads from informants who claimed the paintings were shipped to the IRA in Ireland, or were hidden in the walls of a mobster's home, or were buried somewhere in the Florida Everglades. Every lead, every dig, every new hope turned into another dead end, another frustrating chapter in the long, fruitless search. The international art world was also on high alert. Interpol and art recovery specialists across the globe had the list of the 13 stolen works. Any sale of a Rembrandt, Vermeer, or Degas drawing at auction would be intensely scrutinized. The belief was that the art was too famous to be sold on the open market. Its only value was on the black market, or to a secretive, obsessive private collector who would be content to own the masterpieces in secret, never to be shown to another soul. The paintings had entered a hidden, underground world. In 2013, after 23 years of silence, the FBI held a press conference that sent shockwaves through the public. They announced for the first time that they knew the identities of the thieves. They were deceased members of a criminal organization with a base in the Mid-Atlantic and New England. This was the breakthrough everyone had been waiting for. The FBI was confident they had their men. However, they made an equally stunning admission. Despite knowing who stole the art, they had no idea where it was. The solution to one mystery had only deepened another. The FBI did not release the names of the deceased suspects, but subsequent reporting has identified them as George Riesfelder and Lenny Dimusio, two associates of Carmelo Merlin. The theory is that they carried out the heist, and the art was then passed up the chain of command within the mob, likely to Robert Guerin, and then possibly to Robert Gentile. But with all the key players either dead or silent, the chain of custody was broken. The FBI knew the beginning of the story, but the crucial final chapter remained unwritten. The announcement shifted the focus of the investigation from who did it to where is it. The FBI made a public appeal, stating that their primary goal was no longer prosecution, but recovery. They emphasized that the statute of limitations for the theft had long since expired. Anyone who came forward with information leading to the art's recovery would not be prosecuted for possession of stolen goods. They were essentially offering amnesty in a desperate bid to bring the masterpieces home. The Gardner Museum also sweetened the pot. They increased their standing reward for information, leading to the safe return of the art from $5 million to $10 million. For a brief period, they even offered a separate $100,000 reward for the return of the stolen Napoleonic eagle finial alone, hoping that a smaller, more achievable reward might entice someone to break the silence. The $10 million reward remains one of the largest of its kind ever offered by a private institution, a testament to the immense cultural value of what was lost. Despite the reward and the offer of amnesty, the silence from the underworld has been deafening. Robert Gentile was eventually released from prison and died in 2021, maintaining his innocence to the very end. He was the last, best hope for finding the art, and his death felt like the final closing of a door. If he knew where the paintings were, that secret is now buried with him, another ghost in the Gardner Heist saga. Theories about the art's fate continue to swirl. Are the paintings hanging on the wall of a reclusive billionaire's vault? Were they shipped overseas and traded for weapons or drugs? Are they hidden in an attic in South Boston, their cultural significance lost on whoever possesses them now? The most heartbreaking theory is that the paintings were destroyed shortly after the theft, either accidentally or deliberately, by thieves who realized they had stolen something too famous, too hot, to ever sell or ransom. The loss of Vermeer's The Concert is particularly devastating. It was one of only 2 Vermeers in the United States, and depicted a serene, beautiful domestic scene that was a hallmark of the Dutch Golden Age. The theft of Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee was also a profound cultural blow. It was his only known seascape, a dramatic and chaotic masterpiece that showed the artist's incredible range. These were not just paintings, they were irreplaceable pillars of Western art history. The immediate aftermath of the heist forced museums around the world to drastically rethink their security. The Gardner, once known for its intimate and somewhat trusting atmosphere, was transformed into a fortress. The crime was a wake-up call, demonstrating that even the most sacred cultural institutions were vulnerable. The legacy of the heist is not just the empty frames, but also the state-of-the-art surveillance systems and stringent security protocols that are now standard in museums everywhere. For the investigators who have spent their careers on this case, it has become an obsession. It's a puzzle with too many missing pieces, a ghost that has haunted multiple generations of FBI agents. They have chased down thousands of false leads, interviewed hundreds of reluctant witnesses, and spent countless hours trying to penetrate the wall of silence that surrounds the Boston mob. The case remains officially open, a testament to the hope, however faint, that one day the art will be found. The story of the heist has become ingrained in popular culture, the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and podcasts. It has all the elements of a classic mystery: a daring crime, shadowy suspects, a priceless treasure, and a complete lack of resolution. It taps into our fascination with the underworld and the idea that something of immense value can simply vanish from the face of the earth, leaving behind only questions and speculation. The Gardner Museum itself has become a place of pilgrimage for those fascinated by the crime. Visitors come not just to see the art that remains, but to see the empty frames. They stand in the Dutch room and stare at the voids on the wall, trying to comprehend the scale of the loss. The empty spaces have become a powerful part of the museum's identity, a permanent exhibition of absence, a constant, silent plea for the return of its stolen children. So where does that leave us? We are left with the silence of the guards who were bound in the basement, the silence of the mobsters who took their secrets to the grave, the silence of the masterpieces themselves, which have not been seen by any credible witness in over 3 decades. The thieves won. They pulled off the perfect crime, not because they were never caught, but because they managed to make $500 million worth of cultural heritage disappear from the world. And so, the question that began this story remains the question that ends it, hanging in the air just as the empty frames hang on the museum's walls. Where did the paintings go? Are they slowly decaying in a damp basement, their brilliant colors fading into darkness? Or are they being admired in secret by a modern-day Bond villain? Will a deathbed confession finally reveal their location, or are they lost to us forever? The Gardner heist is more than an unsolved crime. It is a ghost story, and we are all still waiting for the ghosts to come home.